Now what we need to do is, since we know how to graph a complex number, we need to know how to write the trig form of a complex number. So now if you look at your picture over here, if you have the point AB, which A is your real part, B is your imaginary part, and then you're going to have this distance from the origin out to your point. That is your R. That is your, remember that's the same as having the square root of A squared plus B squared. That's what your R is. It is your hypotenuse. What we've done is we made a triangle, a right triangle here. That's your hypotenuse of a right triangle. So if you take A squared plus B squared, that equals R squared, but if you square root it, that's how you get R. So now if you want to write the trig form of a complex number, so if you're given Z is equal to A plus BI, then that means that your Z can be written in trig form as you're taking R, which is this distance out here. If you remember back in 6.3, that's also your magnitude, times the cosine of theta plus I sine of theta. So another way you may see this is just by writing it as R cosine of theta plus I R sine of theta. So that's if you distribute the R through. You don't have to, but you may also see it that way as well. A, notice that A, this is your real part, that is just equal to R cosine theta. Your B then is going to be equal to R sine of theta. And your R, which we talked about up here, well, that's going to be equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared. Now sometimes you have to figure out your theta. Well, you can't write something in trig form if you don't know what your theta is. So your theta is found by taking the tangent. Theta is equal to B over A. Or, the other way to look at it is you could also write that as theta is equal to the arctangent of B over A. Your trig form of a complex number is also called your polar form. We won't talk so much about being in the polar form, but more so the trig form for right now. All right, so for example 2, what we want to do, and example 3, is we're going to write the complex number in trig form. So if we have Z is equal to 3i, well, your trig form that we just learned, your trig form is going to be R times cosine theta plus I sine of theta. So what we need to do is we need to figure out two things. We need to figure out your R, and we also need to figure out your theta. So in order to find out what R is, well, we just had to take the square root of A squared plus B squared. Well, if you have Z equals a 3i, and here we're missing a J, which is okay. That just means that we have a 3, or sorry, not missing a J. Sorry, we're missing your real part out front. So that is a 0, 3. That's your ordered pair, right? There's no real part out front. There's no A. So in this case, A is equal to 0. So we're going to say 0 squared plus 3 squared, and that is equal to the square root of 0 plus 9, or square root of 9, which is 3. So your R is 3. Now the other thing we need to figure out is your theta. So theta is just taking the arctangent of your B over your A. Well, your B is 3 and your A is 0. So we need to kind of think about where would this be. If you take a 3 over 0, that's undefined. So we need to figure out where tangent's undefined. Well, if you draw a little sketch, of where the point 3i would be, 3i, that is, or just 0, 3, think about your complex plane here. Well, 3i, or 0, 3, that is just going up 3, right here. So at this point, that's pi over 2, which means that if you need to find your theta here, your theta is actually going to end up being pi over 2. So even though you plug it into your calculator and you find out it's undefined or you're going to get an error, that's okay, what you may have to do is you may have to just draw a little sketch over here. So what we're going to do is for your final answer, we're going to say that your trig form, z, is equal to your r, which is a 3, times your cosine of pi over 2 plus I sine of pi over 2. And then that is going to be your solution. And there you go. Oops, what in the world is that thing? I don't know either. Alright, so there is your trig form of a complex number.